about one item. It came out to be exactly as you portrayed it. The data was correct. I went to the next one. The next one was the same way. It was accurate and correct. And I did it 3 times, Dane. And then I got a hold of you because I said, this is somebody who has a clue. I better find out more. And you and I first connected.
Well, you know how much I appreciate your courage in reaching out. If we had more like you in academia that were willing to make their voice heard, we wouldn't be in this dark corner right now. And indeed, we're in a very, very dark corner. In May of 2014, Geology Watch first reported its research conclusions, our research conclusions on the war, and we issued our warnings on the ozone depletion and radically increased UV radiation, including substantial levels of even UVC radiation on the surface. You would agree that our warnings in 2014 were indeed justified then, correct?
I don't think that there's any warnings out there that you put that are not severely justified. What people don't understand is just how critical this upper ozone layer and the entire atmosphere plays in our role in life.
Elaborate. I mean, what's your assessment of the overall ozone destruction situation at this point?
Well, you know, I went back into some of my notes and looked at some of the agencies that I tried to contact as far as giving me some ideas as to what the condition of the ozone layer was, what the radiation levels were, and I involved myself with the series, the Cloud and Earth Radiant Energy System satellite that has the scanning microbolometer on it, which is all very technical, but basically they monitor the radiation that the Earth emits. The sun hits the Earth re-radiates some of the energy, and they monitor this with a satellite to give an Earth energy balance, to know how much is staying in the Earth for climate change purposes. They want to know, is the Earth heating up or is it cooling off, which is a whole other conundrum by itself. But in the process, I learned that their instruments were insufficient to measure UVC radiation. Now, I have a background in metrology that has taught me wavelengths from 200 to 2400 nanometers, and I performed calibration in those regions. All of the satellite data that I could find stopped at 300 nanometers.
If I can back up and break that down, hold that thought. I want to break it down for those listening so they understand the bandwidths of UV radiation with UVA at the top, UVB, UVC, and then X-ray. And we're told all UV radiation hitting the planet is either UVA and UVB. We're told that UVC is stopped 100,000 feet up in the atmosphere, which we know is absolutely not true. So elaborating on the bandwidths you're speaking about in the UVC range, and how I'll let you continue on from there. I just wanted to break that down for listeners that we're in a band of UV radiation that we're not being told about, that's intentionally not being looked for. You can't find what you're not looking for, and that we're all being exposed to, correct?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, most of the information, most of the data that's gathered stops at 300 nanometers, which is only mid-part down through the UV. It's slightly more than midpoint down in the UVB measurements. UVB goes down to 281 nanometers.
Correct.
So there's more energy coming out of the UVB region than what's being talked about because their instruments won't measure below 300 nanometers. The spectral radiometer that I'm using for data gathering goes from 200 to 450, which covers the UVC, UVB, UVA, and some of the visible light. So I've got the entire UV spectrum already picked out here. Go ahead.
In summary, I'll let you continue. I didn't mean to cut you off, but when you're done elaborating, let us know, based on everything you've seen and all the metering you've done with the equipment that we arranged once we connected with you so you could do this work, tell us how alarmed you are at what you're seeing, at the readings you're getting. Continue.
Well, when I took readings at Mount Hamilton a year ago, I came back and processed the data. My conclusion was that 80% of the ozone layer was already gone. And I may have some refinements on that, but that's a pretty damn close estimate right now. And this is a year later, and I just completed measurements at Mount Hamilton again. Now, what this means is that of all these agencies out there, and we start with the World Health Organization, the CDC, Stanford University, Science Direct, Vermont University, all of these people, and this is a direct quote from the website at the World Health Organization, they state, quote, short wavelength UVC is the most damaging type of UV radiation, period. However, it is completely filtered by the atmosphere and does not reach the Earth's surface, period.
Which is an absolute lie. Absolute lie, yes.
Totally false. Yes, it is. How can I go out and measure something that doesn't exist? Okay. Now, the instrument that I use is manufactured by a very notable company. They have an extreme reputation as building laboratory standards, and that's what this unit is. The calibration is traceable to NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it's qualified under the ISO 17025, which is the most stringent of all the International Standards Organization rules. Okay, what this is telling me is that this company has manufactured this and will go to court and state the accuracies of their particular instrument. And this is critical.
It is critical, and I know that your readings certainly also, though, are corroborated by what we see on the ground, as our first reports from geoengineeringwatch.org were. We see scorched trees, the Cambrian layer on tree trunks are fried all the way to the core wood. We see this in the forest. We have people in urban areas and so-called experts trying to claim this is a result of windshields and parking lots and so forth. All absolute lies. We see the same thing in the forest. No parking lots, no windshields, native trees, same thing. Leaf scorch, bark scorch. We have peer-reviewed reports on fish being sunburned now, whales' backs being sunburned now. And we have, Ray, you've probably seen in the last week, we now have corroboration of another fact that geoengineeringwatch.org has tried to disclose for nearly a decade, that the insect life is completely collapsing. We had confirmation of that, peer-reviewed confirmation about a week ago, finally, that in their case, they said 75 to 80% of the insects had declined. Our studies in Northern California, working with former Forest Service biologists, have shown a 90% decline in aquatic and terrestrial insects. The UVC radiation, obviously extremely harmful to insect life and microbial life. Yes, Ray?
Exactly, Dean, and that's what prompted me onto the UVC radiation. I have learned there is a extreme. When the World Health Organization said that it's extremely dangerous, they neglected to state why. Okay, I know why. Because 270 nanometers, which is right in the UVC spectrum, is resonant with our DNA and RNA. What this means is that we have, and this is a scientific term, it says our bodies have an actinic, A-C-T-I-N-I-C, response to 270 nanometer radiation. What that means is that the sensitivity, the fact that our DNA is respondent to this radiation, we are actually 9,000 times more sensitive to this particular wavelength of radiation than any other radiation in the solar spectrum. And what that means is that when we experience 1 microwatt per square centimeter of radiation, you multiply that times 9,000, and then times another 10,000 to get into a square meter calculation. We're having as much energy on us as a 100-watt light bulb over a square meter, which is
energy that's in a very negative form, I think, is what people need to digest as well. And on this, go ahead.
It's resonance, and
yes.
If you've been traveling in your car, the window's down, your arm's sticking out there, and there's direct sunlight on it, the surface of your skin feels hot. Okay, it's hot because your DNA and RNA on the surface of your skin are dying. That's the long and the short of it. That's where the pain comes from, because those cells in the DNA is being resonated apart. That radiation is literally tearing the DNA chains and strands apart because of the increased energy. It's like putting your arm up next to a 100-watt incandescent light bulb.
Now, on the form of that, again, in regard to UVC, it's important people understand this is even used for sterilizing laboratories. UVC radiation is used. So
yes, and that's an excellent point, because when you go outside, since everybody denies that UVC is reaching the Earth's surface, I had no references to monitor to say what is normal, what isn't normal, or what's safe and what isn't safe. But through industry use of these, what they call germicidal lamps, which are used to sterilize surgical instruments and other things they may use in surgery, or to do DNA gene splicing, they use 270 nanometers of extreme low intensities. Theirs is less than 0.1 microwatts per square centimeter. 0.1. And what we're seeing out there on a standard day is 1 microwatt per square centimeter. So we're seeing 10 times more than what the industry standard is for a maximum hourly rate.
Now, if the geoengineering programs continue, and I recognize and we have always acknowledged at geoengineeringwatch.org, there are many forms of anthropogenic damage to the planet. It's important people understand that because we have many who would like to, there's many people in the population that would like to try to convince themselves that there's no other damage to the biosphere except geoengineering. That's certainly not true. There's many forms of damage also to the atmosphere. We have the rocket launches, the aircraft traffic, we have the other countless forms of anthropogenic pollution sources. But that being said, we know that the intentional dispersion of particulates into the atmosphere causes, for many reasons, the UV damage. We have also the radio frequency microwave transmissions, and all of this, it's a virtual assault against the atmosphere. I think you would agree with that from countless directions. If we keep going, if geoengineering is not exposed and stopped, and the current rate of destruction from many sources, but let's look at geoengineering as being at the top of that list, how long in the current trajectory would you estimate until complete ozone layer collapse?
That's a good question, because when I came back a year ago, I said that if this continues as it is, by 2025, we'd no longer be able to grow crops on the Earth's surface because of the intense UV radiation. What they have done since is destroying more of the ozone layer, but it's in a really strange way. The formation of the ozone layer is very simple. Wave action on the ocean allows oxygen molecules to be created. Wind currents will take those oxygen way up to the top of the atmosphere.
And including boreal forests, the second largest source, and just to elaborate for listeners, plankton being the largest single source of oxygen production on the planet, boreal forests being the second. But from these oxygen sources, continue.
With the oxygen that's created, the idea is nature has it to get that oxygen up to the top of the atmosphere. Once it's at top of atmosphere, as soon as this radiation, the UV radiation, hits the oxygen molecule, which is an O2 molecule, there is a resonance formed with the O2 molecule. What that does is split it up. It breaks it apart. So now we have free radicals floating around that combine with other O2 particles. They become O3 particles, which is ozone. Now what happens when it changes to ozone is that its resonance frequency changes. That harmful radiation no longer penetrates the O3 and doesn't have the same effect. It is absorbed and redirected. It doesn't reach the Earth's surface with a healthy ozone layer. But we don't have that now because of pollution, and I'm talking industrial pollution, all of the bad things that we've done to our atmosphere, all of the fossil fuels, all of the coolant systems, the ammonia coolant systems that they have for the nuclear reactors that leak, and they can't fix them because there's no way to fix them, so they just put more coolant material in it, and that leaks out into the atmosphere as well. And now we have the methane releases. The problem is, with the geoengineering, they're putting particulates out in the atmosphere, and these particulates, the nanosize, are like sponges. It just grabs everything around it, and it forms a nucleus. Well, that's fine, except it's grabbing the O2 molecule that should be reaching the top of atmosphere. It can't reach the top of atmosphere anymore. They're destroying the ozone layer by limiting the amount of oxygen that can get there. And